All right, we have freaking made it. Day 2 of J3U certification training. Now, I always want to be transparent with y'all. I am freaking exhausted today, and it's mainly because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Sleep was great, but just didn't get a lot of it. So we are feeling rather dog water-ish today. So I think it's kind of ironic because guess what this next module that we're doing is called? Sleep optimization. So this is going to be kind of an interesting one. I am looking forward to what John Jewett being in the position that he's in. You know, he placed like 11th at the Mr. Olympia. He won the Toronto Pro last year, and he's been coaching really cool homies for quite a while. I'm not sure exactly how long, but he is definitely experienced. So I kind of went into it a little bit today, just, you know, going over the first part of the lecture. So this one's called Part 1, What is Sleep For? So this is going to be a little interesting because he's just defining sleep, and then it looks like from the lecture slide that he has up that it's going to be like the different stages of sleep. So that's what we got going on today. Let's freaking get into it. And we are going to do as much as we can. I'm going to set the precedent. It is 5 o'clock right now. We just got back from work. We just got back from training. Well, work first, then training. And now we're getting into this. So I am setting the precedent that we are ending this at 6 so that I can meal prep for tomorrow. I can eat all my food, hang out with my lady, and get a really early night's rest. So that is the freaking plan for right now. But let's get into it.
Now moving on to lecture 2, optimizing sleep. Sleep, like I mentioned in our last lecture, is the most important recovery tool that you have, and this is absolutely how we can raise the ceiling for more training stimulus, or make that same training stimulus we're utilizing to improve the adaptations that is occurring. And so if you're not sleeping properly, you're absolutely going to be able to limit your ability to build tissue, and also limit your ability to lose body fat, or even when you are massing, stay lean. So sleep has lots of roles that we want to cover.
I felt that today when I was at the gym.
Why is sleep even needed?
The lean factor, I just didn't feel as lean when I was checking my physique after.
Performance. Then get into how do we actually improve sleep. Look at some lifestyle aspects that we can be implementing. Look at some overview of some drugs that you might be seeing clients utilize. Kind of weigh out some pros and cons of each. Then get into some supplementation that could be beneficial as well. So what is sleep? Well, this is where your physiological processes that are more alert during the day, metabolic process, regulatory functions, they decrease. They don't absolutely halt, but for a period of time so the body's systems recover and you can prepare for the next day's functional needs. So this is actually a quote out of a research study that's primarily based just all around sleep. Now, we're not going to get heavy into the science of physiology of sleep and all the different stages, but you should know just at least a brief amount about sleep architecture. And why that would be important is because some things are going to impact sleep architecture and the different stages of sleep, where we need all stages to occur. So I know a lot of people might be looking at their Oura rings or their wearable devices that monitor your sleep, and you might see how much time you spend in REM sleep or how much time you spend in non-REM or in your deep sleep, sleep wave, however this may be referring to. And I've used these devices, and sometimes it's hard just to really have good takeaways from them, because you might see like, well, I had more deep sleep, but I don't feel more rested, or I had more REM. Like, what does that mean? And we really need all stages to occur. And there's going to be multiple stages of these sleep cycles that happen throughout your night. They are usually in about 90 to 120 minute segments. And then they'll have about 4 to 6 per night that occur. And these stages are moving out of what is REM sleep, rapid eye movement. This is where you're usually dreaming. There's a lot of memory consolidation that does occur during this, so it's very important for cognitive function for your next day. Then there's also slow waves. So this is non-REM, non-rapid eye movement. This is where body functions slow down, and it's also your most restful sleep. So can we say, is one more important than the other? Should I have more time spent in this one than that one? And really, you need the adequate amounts spent in each one in all of these sleep cycles to occur. So we can't just highlight just one. There is regulatory mechanisms that are present for your sleep cycles, for you being awake and also being asleep. The one that you might hear most often is the circadian biorhythm, or your biological clock. And this is one basically based on the day-night cycle. And we have a lot of bodily processes that are involved in the day-night cycle. We'll touch on a little bit on chrononutrition and what that might mean for dietary strategies around this type of cycle. But this is based on a 24-hour day, and it does control sleep, hormone release, and even body temperature. So we have hormones that are released around your biological clock, one being cortisol is released like this. Same with melatonin, which helps aid sleep. Body temperature is also regulated and throughout this process too. Now there is also sleep-wake homeostasis. So body basically is tracking your needs for sleep. So the more pushed away from homeostasis you might be, you might have it be incurring a need for sleep, which makes a lot of sense. If you're taxing the stress aspects of your body and it's pushing all the way from this homeostatic norm, you're going to need some recovery to take place to get back into homeostasis. So basically it's influenced by your levels of stress, could be nutrition, exercise, even medications can be influencing this. It's as simple as think is like you had a long stressful day and you're really tired at the end of the day. It's like, yes, this is your body's way of regulating, hey, you need sleep. You've been taxing yourself all day long. So we have some pretty critical roles that sleep does
I am
play.
definitely feeling that.
It's like,
sorry, I'm going to run this back because I just need to sleep-wake homeostasis, track needs for sleep, influenced by stress. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty commonsensical. Got circadian rhythm, we got slow wave, non-REM sleep, slowing body function, most restful sleep, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this ever happens to y'all, but this morning I kind of had like REM sleep, I'm guessing, because he was saying it's about dream and memory consolidation, but I felt like I was a little bit awake, but I was still asleep, and I was dreaming. It was like the weirdest thing. I don't know if that ever happens to y'all, like where, it feels like you're not completely asleep, or maybe you are asleep, you're just not in as much of a restful state like you would with like slow wave or non-REM sleep. But I can't even remember what the dream was. All I remember is that I was dreaming in like the 30 minutes before I was gonna wake up. So I don't know, I must have been in REM sleep at that point. But anyways, let's freaking keep going.
Exercise, even medications can be influencing this. It's as simple as think is like you had a long stressful day and you're really tired at the end of the day. It's like, yes, this is your body's way of regulating, hey, you need sleep. You've been taxing yourself all day long. So we have some pretty critical roles that sleep does play. I know we really focus on performance here and building tissue and fat loss, but it also restores immunological and endocrine balance. So it has a large role in immune function. We see like lack of sleep can actually lower immune system, which can make you more susceptible to getting sick. Even hormone production with lack of sleep can cause lower testosterone levels. Like we mentioned in our last lecture, it can even cause menstrual cycle disruption. Also, it increases parasympathetic activity. I'm sure you've heard of the sympathetic nervous system. It's all based on adrenaline and when you need to fight or flight. Well, the parasympathetic activity is based around your need for rest and digest, especially around needed for digestion and gut processes. So if you're not getting adequate sleep, you might start running into more GI issues. And that's when we get a deep dive on gut health and like, oh, man, you must have SIBO or some type of gut disorder. Like, we need to do all this GI testing. Start with the real basics here with people. Like, are you sleeping? Most people might have some sleep disruption. If you fix the sleep, you can fix a lot of GI issues. Also, around the parasympathetic activity is also reproductive function too. Works throughout this nervous system. So if you have someone that's starting to run into libido issues or erectile dysfunction, look to sleep first. Like, what's going on with sleep? Are you getting adequate sleep and quality and waking up rested at night? We also see restoration of nervous system and metabolic function, which is going to be very important for us and bodybuilders to make sure, for one, people that are lacking sleep could have issues with glucose intolerance. The next day, you might have to secrete more insulin to regulate the same amount of glucose. And what that means over time, with lack of sleep, can form more insulin resistance. So sleep will keep you insulin sensitive and help you be partitioning towards muscle tissue. Another important one for cognitive function, like me focusing, trying to tell you about sleep, is consolidation of memory and also learning. So we're trying to reinforce information, uptake it. Sleep is vital in this role. Getting back to our topic of actual muscle building though, also a hormone that is based around sleep is growth hormone. You see the largest peak in growth hormone around sleep and aids in tissue repair. Now, if you're using exogenous growth hormone, you're an enhanced bodybuilder, well, we are replacing this amount, but nonetheless, you can still really leverage growth hormone usage at bedtime to maximize your IGF-1 and support recovery, because that's when you normally have your biggest rise. And when we get to our growth hormone lecture, we will do a deep dive on this topic. Sleep can reduce the risk of different mental health disorders. It has roles in mood stabilization and emotional regulation. So especially for us in prep, when we get more moody, we're already struggling with this aspects, and emotions come up and down. Add poor sleep on top of it, it can just exacerbate these issues. Cognitive function, problem solving, all the more high level types of function that we need for brain health to work can also be disrupted in this process. Sleep also restores, supports cardiovascular health, can reduce inflammation in the body, which with bodybuilding, we are producing a lot of inflammation and taxing our systems. So this can absolutely help promote heart health as well. Energy conservation and weight regulation. An important one that I would really focus on is also brain detoxification. So there's the lymphatic system, which clears metabolic waste from the brain and actually lowers the risk of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia. And so sleep is when this process really occurs. So we see like people are at higher risk for neurodegenerative diseases with poor sleep quality. And this is especially, I think we have a whole lecture coming up in PEDs on the brain, because there absolutely could be a long-term effect of anabolic steroid exposure and risk of dementia. You add on top of it poor sleep, it could just really give you some multiple risk factors for these long-term neurocognitive disorders.
So I saw a lymphatic system. I don't know who
as well. Energy conservation and weight regulation. An important one that I would really focus on is also brain detoxification. So there's the lymphatic system, which clears metabolic waste from the brain and actually lowers the risk of...
Okay, so the lymphatic system clears metabolic waste from the brain.
neurodegenerative diseases like dementia. And so sleep is when this process really occurs. So we see like people are at higher risk for neurodegenerative diseases with poor sleep quality. And this is especially, I think we have a whole lecture coming up in PEDs on the brain, because there absolutely could be a long-term effect of anabolic steroid exposure and risk of dementia. You add on top of it poor sleep, it could just really give you some multiple risk factors for these long-term neurocognitive disorders.
See what we got cooking. Next
All right,
module.
now, the effects of sleep deprivation. This is a really busy slide. I won't dive into it. I think you can review this and read through it on your own if you have enough interest, but this does have more to do with how lack of sleep could affect sport performance. And we basically just point out that sleep affects all body systems. Your heart, respiratory, central and peripheral neuromuscular actions, endocrine system, your immune system, and your GI tract. So all of this can lead to reduced oxygen consumption, altered flight reactions and tendencies to controlling during, this is more related to sports, your reduced ability to actually handle stress, poor healing in place, increased tissue fatigue present, so you might be more susceptible to injuries, and in turn, more susceptible to overtraining, or even strained peer group relations, because you're not able to like emotionally connect with people because moods are dysregulated. So all these can really add up to be problematic for poor performance. This is more so related around sport, but absolutely doesn't translate to bodybuilding. So to get into just a little more on sleep deprivation around the physiological and hormone side, looking more granular at things rather than like what you might be feeling, is for one, sleep deprivation alters glycemic control. It decreases insulin sensitivity. So this is like a huge strategy to make sure you stay insulin sensitive in the off season. You have decreased leptin levels and increased ghrelin levels. This is hunger hormone regulation. So when you have poor sleep, guess what? The next day, you're gonna wake up feeling hungrier, have more cravings potentially. Reduced oxygen consumption and cardiovascular performance. Your cardio is gonna feel harder for you. Reduced motor learning and control. Think about trying to do like some really acute tasks, like when you're trying to learn something new. Like you're not gonna be able to do that as well when you have poor sleep. I think of this as like when you're trying to learn to pose for bodybuilding. It's definitely new for a lot of people and requires a high level of thinking to learn this new skill set, new body positions. When you're in contest prep a few weeks out, that's not the best time to learn new things. So people really struggle with learning posing when they have high levels of fatigue or just poor sleep as well. Or even if you're trying to learn new exercise movement patterns in the gym, or even trying to coordinate a complex lift like a back squat or a front squat. Like you're gonna have a much harder time controlling with motor control those patterns that require a lot of internal bracing. On the hormone side, again, if you're enhanced, you're like, no problem, I'm replacing these hormones, but there's still some you're not replacing that are gonna be dysregulated. However, if you are natural, lower growth hormone levels, testosterone levels, also you can have lower lymphocyte and antibody levels. So we see that action taking place in the immune system, potentially making you more susceptible to infections, viruses. Then also, like we mentioned, decreased mood, motivation, perception of fatigue is more scaled back on the systemic level of what you might be feeling. Now, more specific, then also, like we mentioned,
lower lymphocyte antibody levels. Yeah, I was actually tempted to get a refeed meal today because of my increased ghrelin. But I just need a good night's sleep and we will be freaking set to go. And perception of fatigue. I'm definitely feeling that perception of fatigue today. But we're gonna freaking win, y'all. Let's win.
Decreased mood, motivation, perception of fatigue is more scaled back on the systemic level of what you might be feeling. Now, more specific to actually bodybuilding is there's an increase in recurrent injuries and slowed injury repair. So when you're lacking sleep, like this is also why we'll bring up in some later lectures why, you know, if there's more life distress happening and you have high stress levels, why trying to push hard and grow during that time is not the best. We might want more of a maintenance phase, or even going into a contest prep, if you don't have these recovery tools in place, might not be the best time either. But poor sleep is highly associated with overtraining, and we see even 5 nights of 50% sleep reduction, which is quite a bit, can drastically reduce muscle protein synthesis. And during caloric restriction, sleep loss, we see increased muscle loss and decreased fat loss. This is a huge one to point out. When you're not sleeping, like in a fat loss phase, you may lose the same amount of weight, but more is going to come from muscle and less from fat.
Oof.
This is when someone just starts becoming a smaller version of themselves, and they look like that kind of, some people might saw this, they're over dieted. And a lot of times that's not even a coaching error. It's more of like, it could be an athlete error of not prioritizing sleep quality, or maybe it's a combination of both, right? We're trying to run too aggressive of a fat loss phase to where we can't recover. Fatigue gets really high and it impacts sleep. And in turn, we start losing more muscle tissue than fat tissue. So during contest prep, that's what might happen. You might have more muscle loss, less fat loss. But in the off season, the same thing could occur. You could have less muscle gain and more fat gain. So what would be optimal for sleep? Like, what are our goals? What are we really trying to occur? You could have less muscle gain and more fat gain. So what would be optimal for sleep? Like, what are our goals? What are we really trying to hit here? And for just a recreational athlete, maybe someone just beginning in bodybuilding, maybe off season where you have adequate recovery tools at bay too, 7 to 8 hours is a pretty, still a very, very good range. In some of these studies, when you look at advanced high-level athletes, there's a recommendation around 8 to 10 hours per night. That could get higher, I think, that might be too.
1 second, my lady's calling. Let me just text her real quick. Okay. So we got recreational athletes, aka non-competitors, 7 to 8 hours sleep. Advanced, aka competitors who keep competing, 8 to 10 hours of sleep. So if I go to bed at 8 tonight, which is that sounds amazing, and I get up at 6, 10 hours? No, yeah, dude, we are freaking rolling. All right, let's get it. Let's run it back just a little bit.
Advanced high-level athletes, there's a recommendation around 8 to 10 hours per night. That could get higher, I think, that might be too high just for the bodybuilder, because some of these athletes have extremely rigorous training for hours and hours. So they very well could have that extensive sleep needs. I would say more so if you're waking up feeling rested, you have energy for the day, and by that time you can fall asleep within 30 minutes. I think that's probably where you're getting your adequate sleep. So I think still using your subjective markers to gauge that sleep, but as just like a rough duration number, 7 to 8 hours still holds really true for improving performance. And also we see a reduction of disease states within that range too. But with that being said, too much sleep can also cause increased risk for all-cause mortality and CVD. But going under 7 hours, we usually see an increased mortality risk along the lines with cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and for every 1 hour lower in sleep, you have a 6% increased risk of these various disease states. So again, 7 to 8 hours is probably a very good range to work within. But again, sleep needs are really going to vary person to person, but we have at least a starting number that everyone should kind of aim for.
So that's interesting. So every 1 hour decrease below 7 to 8 hours, there's a 6% increase in disease risk. Disease and mortality risk. Jeez. Decrease. There is increased risk of disease and mortality. I don't know. It's kind of morbid, but I don't know. I just like the way that word sounds. Mortality. All right. Next module. Let's freaking get it.
So what can we do about sleep? How do we improve it? And there's a few things that we can look at. For one, what if you're lacking sleep? Well, we have sleep extension and naps. So sleep extension is simply just trying to allow more time for sleep, and bedtime in general, most efficacious for improving performance. So we simply just need to stay in bed longer. Give yourself the opportunity to sleep for those durations. So some people, it's not whether you have 8 hours in bed, we want 8 hours of sleep. So that might actually look like 9.5 hours in bed. So we actually need just to allocate this more time to being in bed to allow yourself to fall asleep and wake up in a manner where you're not having to jump out of bed to an alarm. To make that happen, it's all about time management strategies. Many people just don't allocate the time needed for maybe 9.5 hours to actually be in bed. Now, what if you don't get a lot of sleep one night? Naps can be very efficacious. If underslept, nap duration is better than none, for sure. 30-minute naps can improve physical performance. 45-minute naps can improve cognitive performance as well. But it would be more ideal to nap in the morning over the evening, as if you nap in the evening, it might start impacting the next night's sleep. And also, you're not really gaining the benefits if you're napping in the evening when you really need to restore performance and cognitive function, potentially if you're going to be training before this nap or right after this nap. Now, catch-up sleep. A lot of people say, whatever. I grind hard during the week. I sleep 5 hours a night. When it's all good, I sleep in like 12 hours on Saturday. Sleep deprivation and catch-up sleep on the weekend and a caloric deficit led to greater muscle loss and less fat loss still. So even with catch-up sleep, it is not the same. You don't catch up on sleep. You still won't gain the benefits if your total sleep for the week adds up as the equivalent of being the equal amounts of sleep across every day. So that's not really best application. You would be better served by trying to put in some naps if that was the case, or readdress your lifestyle to where you don't sleep just 5 hours a night. Now, sleep hygiene, we also want to set up the environment to have proper...
I've definitely been prone to that catch-up sleep in the past where, I would have work all week and then, I would just get more and more tired throughout the week and, I'd end up sleeping like 10, 12 hours on the weekends. But that makes sense, I feel like, I was talking to my coach about this. If I could have one superpower, it would be perfect sleep every night. That would be my superpower. I will die on this hill because, any other superpower, it'd be cool, like teleportation or, I don't know, flying, invincibility, whatever. Like, that's cool, but what are you going to do with it? That's the real question. And I guess you could be like, oh, if I was invincible, I could rob a bank, or if I could fly, I would, I don't know, travel the world. I mean, that sounds cool, but I don't know, man. I feel like if you have great sleep on your side, you're pretty much capable of anything. I know that sounds corny to say, but just my 2 cents. Anyways, let's freaking get it.
Sleep and have the best opportunity to get into that deep sleep. So one thing is, we mentioned the circadian rhythm, day and night wake cycles. Our bodies are set for a routine. So have a routine bedtime. That can make a large difference in routine wake times. You want a dimly lit and cool environment. So your body will go to sleep easier when it is colder. And also, you don't want a bunch of lights around you either. So I try to say, hey, leave the TV out of the bedroom. Don't watch TV at night. You might need to limit your blue light with wearing blue light blockers and decrease your technology usage as you're getting close to bedtime. White noise and earplugs. I sleep with both at night currently. So I have a white noise maker just to drown out if there's any noise around, or even earplugs as well to even help even farther with that. Another thing is a hot bath prior to bedtime has actually been shown to help people fall asleep too, causes some relaxation. You want to focus more activities around relaxing prior to bedtime. So for some people, this might be reading a book, for example, and just remove any other distractions from your bedroom and clutter that might be problematic for you to stay too alert. And then if you are having trouble with, and I find this a lot even for myself, is that I have the task list in my mind for the day. Thinking about all the things I need to do. I need to record the recovery lecture tomorrow, and I need to make sure I hit these points when I'm speaking about it, and I'm going through my things in my head. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to fall asleep like this. So journal down, could be before bed, an hour before bed, your thoughts and worries. Mindfulness training is linked with increased emotional non-reactivity. So this could be you journaling down, what were emotional triggers for the day that you noticed? What kind of sets you off that you kept thinking about all day long? And by doing this, you start becoming more mindful of your emotions that occur throughout the day. And you become more mindful, you become more non-reactive. So you won't react to these emotions as much. So, you have that person that says something to you at work and it triggers this emotion, then like the next few hours you're just like brewing on it, and it's like eating you up, and you're reading into it when it's probably meant nothing at all. Well, that's a reaction. We should be able to control our reactions. Our emotions can be a little different at times. But doing this type of training, you can start limiting the reaction, which is huge. So journaling could be an act for mindfulness for your past day. It can also decrease worry, and there's also a reduction in reported sleep disturbances with this. And as we get a little bit more, I'll also give you some sleep techniques around some strategies you might be able to utilize to help relax too. But it could also be journaling, not just down thoughts and worries for the day or emotional triggers. It could also just be jotting down your list for the next day. So if you have in your head, like, I got to remember these things, well, write them down somewhere so you don't have to try to remember them in your head. So here's a mindfulness training example that you could do. Now there's lots of there's apps that you could be utilizing for mindfulness training. There's different sleep apps that kind of utilize this too. But this is just one example to walk through, is body scan meditation. So the objective here is to bring awareness to each part of your body, release tension, and prepare for a restful sleep. So first off, find just a comfortable position, lie down in bed, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, just allow your body to relax a little bit. We're going to focus on breathing, breathe slowly and deeply, paying attention to the sensation of air entering and leaving the body. I know you're thinking, gosh, they're getting really out there in J3U with this, but this stuff has been proven, it's evidence-based to work. So we're going to do a scan of your body. So start at your toes and slowly move upwards, bringing awareness to each part of your body. Notice any tension or discomfort in that part of the body is something you want to focus on, and then consciously try to relax. So imagine as you take your breaths and you exhale, you just relax that part of the body. And you keep moving up the body as you keep scanning. If anything distracts you, just recognize, acknowledge that thought, and then return back to focusing on your breathing and the body parts as you move up. Once you reach the top of the head, allow your body to sink deeper in relaxation, focusing on the calmness and the warmth in your body. And by the end of this, as you worked up through your calves, through your thighs, through your abdominals, all the way up, and when I've done this, I try to picture like sinking deeper into my bed, right? Because I'll notice like I'll be kind of tensed up in areas and just like relax. And I just let my body kind of drift deeper in my bed, each body part by body part. And when you do this, by the time, you should feel very relaxed and taking your thoughts away from your list for the day and more so into this relaxed state.
It's pretty cool. Touched on meditation. That is my bread and butter. Yeah, I would say on that portion of it, I love transcendental meditation because it's so structured. You know, you have 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, and it's super easy. You know, you have your mantra, and then you gently return to it whenever a thought pops up. And that's pretty much it. That's why I love it so much, because it's so simple, and it's kind of like training in the way that you just have your 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, and then you're freaking set. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, just to kind of review that, we had routine bedtime, dimly light and cool environment, dimly lit, and white noise, earplugs, limit blue light. I've seen like those red light blockers online, and I've never tried it, but I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to do some more research on that. Hot bath prior to bedtime. I mean, it's a lot of work, but you know, when I'm feeling extremely tense, that would be a good freaking idea. Remove distractions, relaxing activities, and journal down thoughts and worries. So if y'all want a journal for this, that kind of like keeps, I don't know, it's helped me just get all of my thoughts out on a page, and it does it in a way that it has like very relaxing quotes throughout the book, or the journal. It's called, it's just called Morning Pages by Julia Cameron. That's a great one. If you just want like a very structured journaling book, I highly recommend that one. But anyways, let's freaking win. Next module. Let's freaking go.
Well, what else can we do? What about training around sleep? Well, here's one thing, is caffeine. So a lot of people can get pretty used to caffeine. I've had people tell me, like, coffee doesn't bother me. I can drink it right before bed. I still go to sleep. Well, here's the...
All right, sorry about that. It's kind of weird. It just, the camera overheated. So that was a little strange. Never had that happen, but saw that as a sign to actually turn on the AC for once. So we got it set to a cool 75. I think it's like 79 in here right now, but it's also, the camera's in the sunlight, so that also has something to do with it. But anyways, next module, let's freaking get to it. I think, yeah, we already started this.
What about training around sleep? Well, here's one thing, is caffeine. So a lot of people can get pretty used to caffeine. I've had people tell me, like, coffee doesn't bother me. I can drink it right before bed. I still go to sleep. Well, here's the thing, is that you may still fall asleep. However, it has been shown in research that even though you build up some tolerance, it's still affecting your sleep architecture. So I would say still, if you want to really maximize your sleep quality, limit it 7 to 8 hours prior to bedtime. So this is, if you train in the evening, limit that pre-workout is the thing. Now, exercise in the evening has even a slight positive effect. This is without your pre-workout though. So exercising post-workout can cause some tiredness, right, and make you have an easier time going to sleep. However, vigorous activity closer to 8 hours prior to bedtime. So this is, if you train in the evening, limit that pre-workout is the thing. Now, exercise in the evening has even a slight positive effect. This is without your pre-workout though. So exercising post-workout can cause some tiredness, right, and make you have an easier time going to sleep. However, vigorous activity closer than an hour to bedtime could impair sleep. It causes increased heart rate, blunts the parasympathetic activity that we're trying to get more of while we are sleeping, which that's pretty obvious, right? So make sure you're not training at least 1 hour before bedtime. Make sure it is earlier in the evening or mid-afternoon. And then factor in meal times around this. So limit large meals 2 hours before bedtime, as that might cause some issues with sleep quality too. We're going to dive a little bit more around into nutrition around sleep and different macronutrient compositions that can be impactful or not. Now, it does show that protein does not look like to impede sleep. So if you're eating a protein bolus for bed and different large meals 2 hours before bedtime, as that might cause some issues with sleep quality too. We're going to dive a little bit more around into nutrition around sleep and different macronutrient compositions that can be impactful or not. Now, it does show that mid-afternoon. And then factor in meal times around this. So limit large meals 2 hours before bedtime, as that might cause some issues with sleep quality too. We're going to dive a little bit more around into nutrition around sleep and different macronutrient compositions that can be impactful or not. Now, it does show that protein does not look like to impede sleep. So if you're eating a protein bolus for bed, that's not really problematic. Some people use casein, it's some more slower digesting. Again, you could do the same thing with having cottage cheese or a beef meal. It doesn't really matter. Get to our nutrition section. We'll dive a little bit more into like, should we be eating protein before bedtime? Now, dietary fats. So it looks like actually saturated fats have a slight positive effect. Unsaturated fats maybe have a potentially negative effect on melatonin production. Now, I wouldn't overly fit into this, as typically in bodybuilding, we don't consume high-fat diets anyway. So the amount of fats that we are consuming, I don't see this being terribly impactful. I know many bodybuilders that eat like steak before bedtime or ground beef. That kind of caters into this, right? It's a protein bolus, a little bit higher in saturated fat, might not be very impactful to sleep, maybe even have a slight positive effect. Now, high-calorie fat intakes can be disruptive. So where this gets more into is if you're eating something really, really high in fat pre-bedtime, that's where it can be problematic. And just high calories in general in evening. And what we're going to talk about here in a second is our chrononutrition around that. Now, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can actually...
Okay, so protein doesn't impede sleep, according to the research. Saturated fats saturated fats might have a positive effect. Unsaturated fats might have a negative effect. So that'd be stuff like avocado or extra virgin olive oil or ghee. Basically anything that isn't derived from animal fat, because that's what saturated fat is. Unsaturated fats have a potential negative effect. Yeah, I mean, the amount of fat that we're eating, I mean, we shouldn't be going like above 35% of our daily intake for fats in general. I mean, that's not super high for bodybuilding, even at 35%. I mean, that's definitely on the higher end, and you probably shouldn't go above that. But I mean, compared to the average diet. It's not even close to extremely high on fats. We got high calorie and fat intake before bed is disruptive. Okay. All right. So carbs can actually have a slight positive effect. It's interesting. TRP. Interesting. I want to see what he says about this. Carbs have slightly positive effect. Uptake of branched-chain amino acids, but not. I don't know what TRP is. That's what it says on the lecture slide, but let's find out.
A slight positive effect. So carbohydrates can cause an uptake of branched-chain amino acids into skeletal muscle. However, tryptophan is not taken up in skeletal muscle. So what you end up is higher serum tryptophan levels, which tryptophan is a precursor amino acid to serotonin and could cause some relaxation to occur. Now, thing around chrononutrition.
Precursor.
Which tryptophan is a precursor amino acid to serotonin.
Interesting.
And could cause some relaxation to occur. Now, the thing around chrononutrition is, for one, your gastric emptying rate is higher in the morning. So your body is set up on this biological clock where we have functions in the body is.
I don't know what he means by chrononutrition. Let's look it up. Chrononutrition. Scientific study of how the timing, frequency, and regularity of food intake interact with the body's internal 24-hour biological clock, circadian rhythms, to influence metabolism and overall health. Interesting. So it's nutrition around sleep, circadian rhythm. Well, not just sleep, it's with the body's circadian rhythm and how it influences metabolism and overall health. Okay, interesting. Let's freaking learn. We got chrono. Okay. Let's actually. Let's write it in my own words. So we got. Let's look at the definition again. Study of timing, frequency,